Okay, in this video we're going to talk about the text type tool, and we're going to talk a little bit about rasterization and what that actually means. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and create a new document. We'll leave it at 600 by 600. I suppose that's fine. And we'll unlock the background here. Now we'll go ahead and switch over to the text type tool, which is T. So we'll go ahead, and all you got to do to come in here and start one up is just click anywhere on the screen. And this is where we have our options toolbar. Changes quite a bit up here. This is our basically, we pick our font, we pick the properties of that font, we pick the height of that font, we pick the smoothness of the font, the orientation or the justification of the font, the color of the font. We can create warp text. I'll get into that in just a second. And all that right there is also a panel that we can pull down under character. So you also have that little option right there. So, and it has a couple more options about it. A lot of these that we don't need to get into as far as the leading and the kerning and things like that. Not necessary for our purposes. So we'll come in here and I'll go ahead and choose something a little bit more what everyone likes to look at, the good old Helvetica. And we'll leave it there, and we'll just type 2-hour tuts.com. Alright, we're acting a little sluggish there. Okay, and now that once we have this, I'll go ahead and adjust the font, which is actually, there's quite a couple different ways that you can choose. You can come in here and type the actual point in that you want. You can actually come in here and click and use the scroll wheel if you want. I use the scroll wheel a lot because I like to judge basically on visually judge instead of just typing in characters. Or you can use a little slider and judge. So whichever one kind of suits your purpose, that's fine. And I click off of that just so I can get back to the move tool, move it down where I want to. If I want to go back, I just hit T for type, and you can click right back in here and select and do your thing. So once we have our thing selected, our text selected, we can come in here. We can still change the color or anything like that to whatever we really prefer, and that'll change down here. Now, as far as the types and things like that, it's just like any other like Microsoft Word or anything like that. You pretty much have the same options you would in there, justification, center. And things like that. It's all pretty self-explanatory in that regard. The create warp text is kind of neat because then you can choose how you want it to look. So if I hit twist and make a funny little twist there, it warps the text into your into however you have the settings set. Arc, that kind of things like that. And you can just, another one of those things you got to get in there and play with and see what you can come up with. They're all pretty self-explanatory in here. I'm just showing you where they're at and how to use them. So once you come in here, you can play around with the different options and really have a lot of fun with it, depending on what your project is. So we'll cancel out of that. This here is a fun little thing to know about too, the text orientation. So if I click that, it goes, from basically up to down. Instead of from left to right, it goes up to down. So if I drop the font down a little bit, you can kind of see now. After I'll click OK to let that go and get the move tool back out, and so you can see that our orientation is there, and we can actually keep on typing. We can keep on typing down and get a feel for what that's really doing for us. So I will come back in here, select, and I'll hit Control A to select all, and I'll switch it back to the normal way here. We'll pop that out, move it back here. I'm going to get rid of that little extra garbage I put there. Let's see. Our next, what do we got here? The vertical type tool kind of does the same thing. Instead of changing the orientation, it just kind of lets you go ahead and start typing that way. So if I do that, it just lets you start typing. Same basic principle on that. Let's see what other options. These are the mask tools. We're going to talk about masks a little bit later, so right now we don't need to talk about that. So I'm going to leave that alone for now. Over here we have the same options, like I said. The kerning there will, I'm sorry if I gotta come in here and just select all. The kerning will adjust the space between the characters, and the leading will adjust the height between. So if I gotta put another line in here so I can get you to see what this means. So now that I have that, if I go ahead and select all of these and adjust the height, it's just the height between the sentences. So that's really what that does. Also, paragraph, you can adjust your margins and things like that. Obviously, Photoshop is not much of a word processing program so much as it is an actual photo editing program, but it does have the bare necessities of text editing. So that's what you'll be looking for. Now, as far as rasterization goes, once you've created your text, this is more of a vector image than it is an actual pixelated image. So what that means is when I expand this out, I can expand it as much as I want without it getting distorted by pixels. So the more I keep zooming in, the more crisp those edges will stay, as long as it's still in this. See this little T? As long as it's still a vector. And I'll just go ahead and put this back down to size. So like I said, as you can see, the more we zoom in, it doesn't lose its quality. It doesn't lose any crispness, and and you don't see any pixels. So, however, when we go, I'll go ahead and do that. However, without rasterizing, I'm going to go ahead and trash that. I don't know where that came from. Without rasterizing this, we can't paint on this. You see the little exclamation or the little cross mark there, which says we cannot do anything unless we rasterize it. So you'll get an error anytime you actually try to edit this layer. So in order to rasterize it, you can go ahead and right click and click on rasterize type. And once you rasterize it, now I'll show you exactly what that means. Is that if I go back to expanding again, now you can see that it's getting real fuzzy, and the edges are not crisp at all. But you can see and you can see the pixels there. But if I go in here back to the brush tool again, we'll go ahead and apply that. If I go back to the brush tool and get back to a normal brush that's not so out of this world, I can color on top of this layer. And another little side note is if we lock the transparency of this, and we'll switch over to a bright red so you can see what I'm doing. If we switch to the transparency, that means it'll only draw inside what is currently active in this layer. So just kind of like that is, but without lock transparency, I can color all over the place. But when I lock the transparency, it will only color on top of things that are in that current layer. So there's another little fun trick that you should play with. That's all for the type tool and the rasterization explanation for now. Let's see. We need to talk about masks, and we need to talk about these little guys right here. So that's what's coming up in the next following videos.